last week, as part of our gel overlay backfill, we removed the old color. And you can see I still have the majority of the product left on the nails. And I'm also going to be using a slightly different product to backfill these with. We went from a soak off product that my client didn't like as well, so I'm going to use a hard gel product this time. I'm still using a soak off base coat underneath from the same brand. So I'm going to be using, this is Light Elegance P Plus base coat. It's a soak off base coat, and I'm going to use this under a hard gel overlay for these natural nails. So since there's already quite a bit of soak off overlay still left on the nails, I'm just kind of concentrating the product up by the cuticle area where the regrowth is and any areas where I have filed the majority of the product off. And as I go along, I can flash cure the fingers or cure as I go to control the product and make sure that it's in the areas that I want it. So when you're backfilling an overlay, you don't have to add a lot of product because remember, we just want to have that protective layer that we're going to e-file down to. And we don't want it to be any thicker than about a credit card. We're also going to add 2 coats of color and top coat, so we don't want the nails to be overly thick. That's why we're not going to spend a lot of time like we did with the initial application of applying all that product and finish filing. If you can get away with maintaining a lot of your overlay as you remove the color, then you're not going to have to do a whole bunch when it goes to backfilling. So I'm just applying the majority of the product up by the cuticle area where the regrowth is, and then just coating the rest of the nail. So you can see this nail already has a bunch of overlay product on it, and I just need to put a little bit up by the cuticle area where it has regrown. Now I'm using the same base coat for the same brand of the gel that I'm going to put on next. So I really recommend that if you are going to switch products, like let's say you're going to use a different color this time, that you use the same gel from the same brand underneath. That way you're not going to have issues with incompatibilities in your inhibition layer. Once the gel is cured and finish filed, it doesn't matter. So you can see that I had Cocoist overlay on first, but I'm going to switch gears here and use a different product. So I'm using the matching base coat for the product that I'm going to put on these nails. So just going through and curing the nails when I feel like they need to be cured to prevent any issues. And you can see me put the product right in front of my brush. So I've got like a little bulldoze technique going on where I put the product in front of my brush, push it up and concentrate it by the cuticle area, and then just gently pull it through and make sure the edges are capped again. You can do the thumb separately if you want to, or you can cure everything together. It just depends. Because I've got the overlay on and I'm just backfilling it a little bit quickly, I don't need to worry so much about this gel moving all over the place. The goal here with backfilling is to maintain the majority of the product that we put on the first time and not have to do any rework. So as you move forward, the overlay backfill should be very, very quick, much quicker than if we soaked off the gel polish and started from scratch. So the whole goal here is to make this process efficient, fast, and also precise. So I'm going to use a hard gel color from Light Elegance. It's a glitter gel. And as you recall from my previous videos, hard gels cannot be soaked off. So that's why I'm maintaining that soak off overlay on the natural nail underneath this new product I'm going to put on. And I do this a lot where I adapt to what my client wants. I adapt to their needs. This client is really, really hard on her nails. And so sometimes hard gel just works better for people that are really rough on their nails because it's less prone to being worn down. So this glitter gel is actually a hard gel color that has glitter in it. So I'm able to kind of create my overlay using this particular product. That's why I kept my base coat so thin, because I know I'm going to use this product, which is a hard gel, and I can create the overlay with my color layer. So this is going to be a little bit, advanced for some of you that are just getting into overlays, but overlays don't necessarily only happen with clear gels. You can also do it with different products. So like I said, this Light Elegance product is a hard gel, so I can absolutely do a natural nail overlay with this particular glitter gel. So you'll notice I'm applying it a little bit more thickly and kind of smushing it around as if it were a builder gel. It has a similar consistency to builder gel, so I'm able to really adjust my application. And also I'm taking into consideration the smoothness and the shape of the nail as I apply. So you'll see me touch and pull the gel back a little bit, making sure that I've got a nice apex and the nail is smooth. And I do like using the one finger technique when I'm applying like this. If the nail is perfectly applied, I mean, why run the risk of it moving or, whatever. So I do like to apply one finger at a time. If the nail is perfectly applied, I lock that in by curing it. And I can really only apply every, 30 seconds. I mean, I can do a nail in about 20, 30 seconds. So it works out perfectly because I'm not wasting any time in between fingers. I'm curing one while I'm applying another. Making sure no gel touches the skin. And I just go like this back and forth through all of the nails. I'm applying my initial coat, making sure it's nice and evenly applied. And I do concentrate the product where I need it most, like at the apex area, making sure the cuticle area is thin but even. And I'm using a very light pressure on my brush. As you'll notice, the bristles on my brush don't even spread apart while I'm doing this. It's as if I'm using my brush like a spatula, and that's exactly what you want to do when you're working with gel products. The only time my bristles spread on my brush is when I'm doing base coat. This color is really pretty. It's just got a nice shimmery glitter in it. It's clear. It just creates a nice natural effect. And it's actually the same gel that I'm wearing on my left hand. So you can absolutely see how just, I've got hodgepodge nails on in this video where I've got two different hands, but you can absolutely see how wearing a specific color or wearing a specific design can absolutely influence the choice of your clients. So if you're wanting to promote something specific, make sure that you wear it on yourself, and it's more likely your clients are going to ask you for it. So again, flash curing in between, or you can do a full cure in between. Most nail techs can't paint faster than about 20 to 30 seconds a nail, so it works out perfectly that you're able to cure a nail while you're painting another. You're able to lock in your application and not run the risk of it getting moved around or bumped or anything happening to it. So it's nice to be able to lock that in if you're really happy with your application. Saves a lot of time later. And I just kind of touch and pull, making sure that the gel is exactly placed where I want it, and also making sure the glitter is evenly applied. So you can now see I've got the gel base all the way up to the cuticle area. And then I also have that overlay from before with a little bit of added gel that was pulled through over the natural nail. So I'm able to maintain an overlay that's about a credit card thickness, because if I am filing off a little bit and adding a little bit, it always maintains about the same thickness throughout the return of the client and also throughout all the services. So that's why we don't need to build up the nail from scratch again, because we already have product on the nail and we don't want to make it overly thick. Especially considering we're going to do color and top coat, we have to take all the layers into consideration to make sure that this is nice and thin. The number one reason why people complain about their nails being thick is the free edge, which is the tip of their fingernail. If the free edge of their nail is thick, they're going to feel like their whole nail is thick. So I like to keep the free edge as thin as possible while still, putting enough product for my product to be able to prevent from peeling or cracking. Some products need to have a certain thickness so that they don't peel or crack. But credit card thickness is a perfect metric to think about on the free edge. Make sure that you're keeping that level of thickness. And you can also add a little bit more product in the center of the nail if you want to. Build up that apex while keeping the free edge thin. So I look down the barrel and make sure that it is the thickness that I want. And I just keep an eye on it as I'm applying. You'll also notice I tip the fingers down slightly while I'm applying the product, and this really helps maintain control. I don't want the product to run towards the cuticle if it's going to move at all, so I usually do tip the fingers down ever so slightly while I'm working. That allows me to keep the gel moving away from the skin. And especially if your client has warm hands, this is going to be very important to keep in mind. So I can add a little bit more product where I feel like it's a little bit thin or I have little divots. And very quickly, I'm able to reapply the product and the new color. I would say that in the amount of time that it would take me to soak everything off, re-prep the nails, and reapply, I'm able to do a backfill on an overlay in about maybe half to 3/4 of the time. So I'm definitely saving time on the appointment. Usually this process takes me about 45 minutes from start to finish. So from the time my client sits down, I remove all the color, I re-prep, and I reapply, and they're walking out the door, it's about 45 minutes, which is, I would say much faster than the soak off process. And it's also less damaging. The other nice thing about doing this overlay technique is that I'm able to keep the nails completely dry, especially since I'm doing an e-file manicure. So I don't have to worry about lifting or the gel not adhering properly. Keeping the nails perfectly dry is a great, great way to ensure your work. And because we're applying gel on gel and we've already got that nice overlay that's bonded to the natural nail, it's just so much easier to make sure that everything is working out. So on the second coat, the gel is less likely to move, so I can do a couple fingers at a time if I want to. So I'm pushing the product into the areas that I want it, gliding over the top. You'll notice I press and pull a lot with my brush. And I'm really just trying to deposit product and deposit those glitter pieces where I want it as I'm doing this motion. And then I pull it through nice and thinly, make sure the edges are capped and everything is nice and even. And I'm always looking down the barrel, which is hard for you guys to see on camera, but I always look down the end of the finger to check the thickness, check the angle, check where the gel is concentrated, and also check the thickness on the free edge. Applying gel is definitely not like applying nail polish. You can shimmy and move and pull and push. It's all really about frosting the finger and manipulating the product to go where you want it to go. And as I look down the barrel, I can add a little bit more product to the areas I feel like are a little bit thin. So you'll notice on the second coat, I'm able to do all 4 fingers. Usually once you have gel down on the nail, it's much less likely to run. And if you can keep the client's hand flat, sometimes you have to do 1 finger at a time on the first coat, and then you can get away with more fingers on the second coat. I kind of adapt to the situation. I don't have a real specific process that I always follow. I just adapt based on the client that I'm working on, the situation, the product I'm using. And if I can get away with more fingers at a time, I do. The biggest thing for me is just trying to prevent mistakes and also making sure that if I've got a good application, that I'm able to lock it in and move forward in the appointment. I'm always thinking about moving forward. This really helps to shave down time. If you're always really thinking about next step, how can I move forward in the appointment faster, better, more efficiently, you're going to really shave off a lot of time in your appointments. The biggest thing that happens is as we work, we get fixated on certain things and we want to perfect something. And while we're perfecting it, something else goes wrong. And then we've got this downward spiral of wasting time. So that's why I do like to do the curing, 1 finger at a time, or I adapt depending on what I'm doing. My goal here is to do this as efficiently and precisely as possible. You'll also notice this client has extremely dry skin, but that's okay. We want to leave the skin dry. It's actually not rough. It's very smooth to the touch, but we want to leave the skin dry while we're working. So don't worry about the skin looking dry. And just because there is dry skin doesn't mean it should be removed. I also always give my clients exactly what they pay for, which doesn't mean that I'm, stiffing my clients and giving them crap services for the money they pay. But what I mean is that I absolutely think about a metric of per minute, right? So if I'm charging for a 45-minute service and I'm charging X dollars and it takes me 2.5 hours to do that service because I'm, being nitpicky, then I'm really losing money. So if you're charging for a 45-minute service or for an hour service, make sure you're sticking to your time requirements so that you're not only not losing money, but you're also making sure that your client has the right expectation of how much time something is going to take. So I do cuticle prep and I do make sure the nails are as perfect as possible, but I also take into consideration the amount of time that I'm able to spend on a given client before I start losing money as a business. So for salon style nails, I absolutely make sure that my clients' nails are healthy, they're well taken care of, their skin is smooth, and they leave with very smooth, beautiful, amazing nails. But it's also up to my client to keep their fingers moisturized, and I'm not going to spend an extra hour on a client, trying to overwork their skin to get it magazine picture perfect when at the end of the day, their skin is dry and just needs moisture. And number two, they're really coming to me for a 45 to an hour service. They're not there for me to work on them for 2.5 hours. If I do need to do something drastic, I do need a client to come in for an extra long appointment, if I'm going to work on their skin or something like that, or I'm really trying to fix an issue, then I purposely pick a different time and I book that appointment accordingly. Okay, so I'm just adding a teeny bit more product on the thumbs because the thumbs get used more, and I just want to build up this finger just a teeny bit more. I'm going to add just a little bit of extra product, making sure I've got a nice apex on the finger. Thumbs do take a beating, and this is hard gel, so it's really going to make a nice, rigid, hard feeling for the client, which is going to be nice. But I do want to make sure I've got enough product on there and that I've got a nice, even glitter application. So instead of using clear gel for my overlay and then just very, very thin gel polish, I can use this particular product as my overlay product as well. So I just check the smoothness from the sides, rotate the finger around, and make sure everything's nice before I cure it. Now, if your overlay is lumpy, you can absolutely finish file it at this point. And even with this particular hard gel product, you could finish file this product if you wanted to. But the nails are pretty dang smooth. So I'm going to apply top coat first, just to encapsulate the color and protect the glitter. And then I can actually buff these afterwards to make sure they are perfectly glass smooth and apply one more layer of top coat. I often will cheat. Instead of cleaning the nails and then doing it, I often will just use a thin layer of a no wipe top coat to be able to kind of encapsulate what I'm working on, and then I won't have to clean the nails. It allows me to be able to finish file or buff the nails if I need to, but it also kind of protects what I've already applied. So you'll see me do that a lot as we move forward with these videos. I'll kind of, instead of cleaning the nails and introducing fuzz, I'll often use no wipe top coat to encapsulate color and remove inhibition layers so that I'm not introducing fuzz into the picture while I'm still applying product. So I just check the base coat before it goes in the lamp, make sure that it's nice and even, and take off any thickness on the sides that might have run a little bit. While the other hand is curing, I'm going to work on this hand and apply the top coat. Again, if you can get away with the top coat being perfect on the first application, by all means, this is the last step. But what I usually do with glitter, especially since glitter has a lot of texture, is I'll encapsulate glitter with some top coat, and then I will go back and I will check to make sure the nails are smooth. If they're not smooth, I will buff them or finish file them, make sure they're smooth, and then I'll apply just one more thin layer of top coat to make sure they're shiny. So right now I'm just going through and applying top coat, assuming that all the nails are smooth, but I'll be able to check my work in just a second. So I just want to make sure the gel top coat hasn't run into the sides too much or it's too thick on one side. And then I'm going to go ahead and cure these nails. All right, so this top coat, I am going to just go through and clean everything, make sure I can feel if anything's scratching. I like to use wipes to see if anything's catching on the fabric. I use gel wipes a lot to check if the nails are smooth because I can feel the product catching on the gel wipe if it is going to catch. This allows me to really see what it would feel like for the client on their clothing, on their hair. If it catches on the wipe, I know there's a problem. So I'm just going to remove any residual product that's on there, and then I'm going to go through and feel these. And then I'll give them a nice finish buff and another layer of top coat. But I highly recommend using your tools to check your work. Like for example, gel wipes are a great way to check your work. I use gel wipes on crystals, on glitter, on anything just to make sure that the nails are perfectly smooth, because these types of gauzy wipes will actually catch on edges. They'll catch on anything that's sticking up, and it really helps me check my work to make sure that things are perfectly smooth. So now what I'm going to do is go through and I'm just going to finish file the surface of this product. Again, this is like as if it were an overlay, right? I've got hard gel color on here with top coat, and I also have my base layer underneath. So I just very, very gently file through to remove any glitter that might be sticking up and also to make sure the nails are perfectly smooth. Again, you could do this without a hard gel glitter like this. You could do it just like I did my first application, where you're going to do clear builder and then you're going to go through with just 2 coats of thin gel polish. But I wanted to show you guys something a little bit different today just to kind of mix it up. That way you guys can see that there's lots of ways that this overlay application can be applied. So I'm going to dust this off to show you kind of what I'm doing. So I'm basically looking from the side to make sure that the overlay is nice and smooth. I want a nice arch. And also down the barrel, I also want a nice arch. So I'm just going through with my nail file, making sure the free edge is also smooth, but making sure the surface of the nail is nicely shaped. I look from all angles. Going through the surface, making sure that everything is perfectly smooth and I've got the right thickness exactly where I want it. Usually, if you do a great job on your application, this finish filing process is going to be very quick. You're going to use a very light hand. You can do it with an e-file if you have a lot of product to remove, but the goal here is not to apply a ton of product and then file it all off. That's a waste of product. So the goal here is to be able to apply your overlay as nicely as humanly possible. That way you're eliminating a lot of the finish filing and you're not just filing off all the product that you just freshly applied. Remember, everything that we do has a purpose, and the more efficiently you can do that, the better off you're going to be. You're going to save product, you're going to be faster at your services, and everything is going to really add up to a successful appointment. So here you can see I can also use an e-file with a sanding band to do this process. I'll show you guys both hand file and e-file. I'm just using a sanding band, so as if it were a hand file, very, very lightly going through, doing the exact same thing I would do with a hand file, but I'm using a mandrel and a sanding band instead. Very, very light-handed. I don't want to remove too much of the color. But an e-file just saves me a little bit of effort on my hands. An e-file also allows me to get closer on the cuticle and the sidewalls than I can with a hand file. It's just a little bit more precise. And I keep the bit moving because sanding bands do create quite a bit of heat, so I want to make sure that I'm using very light pressure, especially since we're working so close to the natural nail. By finish filing this product, it's going to make sure that everything is perfectly smooth, and then I can put one more thin layer of top coat to make them shiny. So I keep my sanding band perfectly parallel to the nail. You'll see that the sanding band turns white all the way down. And I'm very, very cautious about the edges. I don't want to dig into the natural nail. I don't want to create a ring of fire. So I use a very, very light pressure, just like as if I'm using a hand file. Okay, so now I have all the nails perfectly smooth and dusted off, and I can apply my final layer of top coat. So I'm just going to dust off the nails one last time, make sure that there's no grit or anything. And now I can apply my final layer of top coat to make them shiny again. I can apply a nice thin layer. I'm not worried about adding thickness or changing the shape. I'm just focusing on capping them and making them perfectly shiny. And these nails are going to be glass smooth, even though I used kind of a chunky glitter underneath. So I'm curing as I go just to make sure that the top coat stays exactly where I want it. And again, you can see how I adapt back and forth depending on what I'm doing. All right, and now that these nails are cured, they are not sticky anymore because I used a no tack top coat. They have a nice shape. They have an overlay on them, so they're going to be nice and strong. And now it's time to add some moisture back to this porous skin that's been dry this whole entire time. So I'm just going through and applying cuticle oil all over the skin, rubbing it in. I'm applying a ton of cuticle oil because I want this to really soak in while I'm working. And then I'll remove the excess in a second. I can feel a little bit of grit on this side with my thumb while I'm applying cuticle oil, so I'm just going to remove that as I work. And I love using the cuticle oil application process to check my work. It allows me to rub the fingers, see if there's any areas that are scratchy, and I can remove that with my file really quick so that my client doesn't have to tell me to file it. I find that this is one of the few things that really a lot of nail techs don't do, but it helps you stand out from your competition, is fixing things before your client even asks you to fix them. So if you're able to find problems and fix them, it's going to make your client feel like you're paying attention. It's going to make them feel like you're actually, doing a good job, and they don't have to always be like, oh, there's something here that's bugging me. I mean, it's very awkward for clients to have to bring that kind of stuff up to begin with. So, jump on it before they even bring it up. So I'm just rubbing this all in. I can feel a little teeny piece of grit on the side of this nail. And there's a little teeny notch on the top. So I'm just going to gently buff that just a touch. Thankfully, it didn't affect the top coat. So any corner, any area I can feel a little bit of scratchiness, I absolutely will finish file that to make it nice and smooth again. Now I'm going to take off the excess oil with just a dry wipe. I'm just going to massage the cuticle oil into the finger with just a dry, clean wipe. Take off any excess so that it's not globbed on. And it just makes these nails perfect, picture ready, nice and smooth, and no excess oil. But you can see how nice the skin looks after it's got some moisture back on it. So everything is perfectly clean. The cuticles are nice and clean. The color's nicely applied. And really my client just needed a little bit of upkeep and some moisture, and she's got beautiful skin. We haven't overly done it, and she's got a nice overlay now. So that is how you do a backfill overlay on natural nails. The nails look really nice from side to side. They have a nice apex, nice shape, and definitely more of an overlay than a regular gel polish manicure. That's exactly how you do a backfill on an overlay. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, feel free to comment below with any questions, and I will be in touch again next week with another video.